My name is Ivy Andrews. I'm 35 years old, an Army JAG major, and I came home from a 7-month deployment in Germany 3 weeks ago. The first thing I did was check the closet for a cedar box. I knew my mother would skip my daughter on Christmas Eve. I didn't know it would take an 8-year-old and that wooden box to make her scream. My daughter is Maya. Eli and I brought her home from foster care when she was 8 months old. She is 8 years old now. For all 8 of those years, my mother has called her, in private, not really family. For all 8 of those years, my whole family has kept quiet. What none of them knew was that my dad, gone for 2.5 years, had spent his last summer drafting something only I had a key to. He'd told me, on the dock at the lake cabin, exactly when to use it. 43 minutes after we sat down to Christmas dinner, my 8-year-old slid that cedar box across the table and said the line we'd practiced. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. If you've ever watched a family member pretend a child doesn't exist while the rest of the room stays quiet, you'll understand every beat of this story. Drop a comment with one word that describes how that silence feels. Make sure you're subscribed, because what happens at this Christmas table will leave bruises that paperwork heals slow. The plane touched down at Minneapolis-St. Paul on a Sunday afternoon, the runway dusted with November snow. I had my duffel and my Pelican case, and a folder I hadn't touched in 2.5 years. Eli was waiting at arrivals with Maya on his shoulders, both of them in matching gray beanies. She slid down his back and wrapped both arms around my waist before I could set the case down. She smelled like apple shampoo and the inside of our minivan. "You're heavier," I said into her hair. "You're taller," she said back. Eli kissed me, took the duffel, and we walked out into the cold. On the drive home to Stillwater, Maya pulled something out from under her jacket. Walter's silver dog tag, the dented one, from his Vietnam tour. She'd been wearing it under her hoodie since the funeral. "I kept him with me," she said. "I know, baby." Eli glanced at me in the rear view. We didn't say it in front of her. We didn't have to. The next holiday cycle was already a calendar on the kitchen wall, and we'd marked Christmas Eve in red. 3 weeks out. At home, after Maya was in bed, I walked to the hall closet and opened the door. The cedar box sat on the top shelf where Eli had moved it from our storage unit, Walter's handwriting on the small brass tag tied to the latch. For Maya, when the time comes. I ran my hand along the leather strap. 3 weeks until Christmas Eve. 3 weeks until the trust paperwork could legally move. I closed the closet door. "You okay?" Eli said from the hallway. "Yeah. We're ready." The group text came on a Tuesday morning while I was making Maya pancakes. It was from my mother. Subject line, Christmas Eve dinner, bringing presents. "Christmas dinner at my place," it read. "Bringing presents for the kids. Sophie and Jackson get something special. Maya's welcome too, of course." I read it twice. Then I read it again. The "of course" sat in the middle of the message like a dropped pebble in a clean glass of water. Maya climbed onto the counter stool next to me and read it over my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She just leaned her head against my arm. Then she went back to her pancakes. Eli was at the dining table going through old work emails. He looked up. "What was it?" I turned the phone toward him. He read the message. He read it again. Then he stood, walked to his office, came back with a thick black 3-ring binder and opened it on the kitchen counter. "Folder number 47, he said quietly. The binder was organized by date. Photos, screenshots, printed emails, voicemail transcripts. 8 years of them. Holiday after holiday, birthday after birthday, voicemails from Aunt Linda. Forwards from Heather. Patricia's loud Christmas card list with Maya's name in smaller writing at the bottom, as an afterthought. He slipped the new text into the next plastic sleeve, time-stamped it, closed the binder. 47, he said again. "I'll be home all month," I said. "We have the cabin paperwork. We have Dad's letter. We have his attorney's number. We just need her to be there." "She'll be there. Then so will we." Maya finished her pancakes and slid down to feed the dog. After Maya went to school, Eli and I sat at the kitchen table with the binder open between us. I hadn't seen all of it, Most of it I'd missed because I was overseas. Some of it I'd seen as it happened. Most of it Eli had absorbed alone. Page 1. A photograph from Maya's first birthday party. Eli held Maya in his lap. Patricia stood in the background, in focus, not looking at either of them, gift card in her hand for Sophie. Forgot Maya's gift this year, Eli's note read. Said it would be too confusing to give different things. Page 8. An email from Heather to her cousin Renee, accidentally CC'd to Eli in 2019. The line read, "Your little project," referring to Maya. The rest of the email was about gluten-free cupcakes. Page 16. A voicemail transcript from Aunt Linda. Pat, do we have to have the adopted one over for Easter? My back's not what it used to be. Patricia had not corrected her. Patricia had said, "Just for an hour, Linda." Page 23. A Christmas card from Patricia, 2021. Inside the card, 3 names handwritten in red pen: Sophie, Jackson, and Ivy. No Maya, no Eli. The card was addressed to our beloved grandchildren. Page 41. The screenshot of last year's Christmas when Patricia had handed Maya a single-use Starbucks gift card. $5. The other 2 kids had unwrapped a Lego set and a charm bracelet. I closed the binder gently. I rested my hand on the cover. Walter saw all of this, I said. He saw it before we did. He's why we have a plan. Eli nodded once. He didn't have to say anything else. That Sunday night, I tucked Maya into bed. She had Walter's dog tag in her hand, the chain wrapped twice around her small wrist. "Mom," she said, "will Grandma read Grandpa's letter this Christmas?" I sat down on the edge of her bed. I'd been waiting for this question. I'd rehearsed the answer with Eli a dozen times. None of the answers I'd rehearsed felt right when I was looking at her face. "We'll see, sweetie," I said. "Maybe she will. Maybe she won't." "What if she won't?" "Then I'll read it for her. Aloud. In front of everyone." Maya thought about that. The lamp made small triangles of yellow on her bedspread. "Either way," I said, "you're going to hand her the box. That's your part. Your grandpa wanted you to give it to her. Not me. Not Dad. You." "Why me?" "Because he said you were brave enough. What if I'm scared?" "You can be scared. You can still do it." "Brave isn't not scared, baby. Brave is scared and still walking the table." She looked at her dog tag. She turned it over so the dented edge faced up. "Grandpa was scared sometimes too, right?" "Plenty of times." "Okay," she said. I leaned down. I smoothed the hair off her forehead. I said the line I'd said to her every night since she was 3 years old. "I see you, Maya. Grandpa saw you too." She smiled the small, careful smile she'd had since she was a toddler. She closed her hand around the dog tag. She turned over to face the wall. I turned out the lamp. I stood in the doorway a long time before I went downstairs. Christmas Eve morning, the snow started before sunrise. By 8 o'clock, the driveway needed shoveling, and the world outside our window looked the way Christmas mornings are supposed to look on a postcard, which is to say nothing like the inside of my mother's house. I laid out my dress uniform on the bed. Service blues, ribbons polished, name tape on the right side, Andrews. Patricia had insisted on a uniform photo for the family album every year since I made captain. She had never displayed any of them. I didn't ask her to anymore. I wore the uniform anyway, because Walter had liked it, and because today, the uniform was going to matter. In the mirror, I tucked Walter's silver dog tag inside the collar. The dented edge sat warm against my skin. I closed the second button over it. Maya came in wearing the red velvet dress Eli had made her, with white tights and the small black Mary Janes. Her hair was in 2 French braids. She had Walter's old watch on her left wrist, set to the wrong time on purpose, because she liked it that way. "You look like Mom from a Christmas movie," she said. "You look like you," I said. Eli stood in the doorway, suit and tie, a quiet smile. "Cedar box?" "Already in the car, under Maya's seat." He nodded. He kissed Maya's forehead. He kissed mine. "Drive in," he said. "Eat dinner. Stay calm." Maya hands her the box when dessert's on the table. We leave when we leave. Copy that. Maya, who had grown up around army cadence, gave us both a small salute. Then she walked downstairs to put her coat on by herself. Stillwater in December looks like a town someone built on purpose for Hallmark cards. Brick storefronts, white lights wrapped around the lampposts, the river frozen at the edges. My mother's house was on a side street 4 blocks up from Maine, a 2-story Victorian with a wraparound porch she'd repainted 3 times since Walter died, each time a color Walter had hated. The driveway was full when we pulled in. Heather's SUV, David's pickup, Aunt Linda's old Buick with the rosary still hanging from the mirror. The porch light was on. The wreath on the door was new. Fresh balsam, gold ribbon, a brass bell at the bottom that rang when the door opened. Eli parked behind Aunt Linda's Buick. I sat for a second in the passenger seat. Maya was in the back, holding the cedar box on her lap, both hands flat across the lid. We okay? Eli said. We're okay. We got out. Maya carried the cedar box like it was a covered dish, the way Walter had taught her. Eli held the door. The bell rang as we stepped inside. Patricia met us in the foyer. She hugged Heather first, even though Heather had already been there for 2 hours. She kissed Sophie's hair. She gave Jackson a pat on the head. She turned to me and gave me a tight half smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Ivy, you look thin. Hi, Mom. She looked past Maya, past her. Like Maya was a coat someone had hung on the wrong hook. Oh, she said. You brought her. Of course. Maya didn't flinch. She'd been here before. She set the cedar box down by her boots. Come in. We're already at the cookies. The kitchen smelled like butter and clove and the Christmas pavlova my mother makes every year because Aunt Linda once complimented it in 1996. Sophie and Jackson were already at the counter with cookies. Patricia had set out 3 small plates with their names. There was no plate for Maya. Eli quietly took a 4th plate down from the cabinet and set it next to mine. He put 2 cookies on it. He nodded at Maya. She climbed up onto the stool between us. I leaned in the doorway and pretended to look at the ornaments on the kitchen window. From there, I could hear Patricia and Aunt Linda by the stove. Pat, Aunt Linda was saying, low, you don't have to make a fuss for Maya. She's not really family, Pat. You said it best. Patricia laughed once, soft. Linda. Well, you said it. I'm only quoting. Heather walked past with a casserole dish. She didn't react. She must have heard. The kitchen is the size of a hallway. Eli's jaw set. He didn't turn. He didn't say anything. He picked up the cookie plate and walked back to Maya with it. I felt my chest go very quiet, the way it goes before a deposition. I'd heard versions of this line for 8 years, through screenshots, through Eli's binder, through Maya's awkward birthday parties. I had never heard it from Linda's mouth, in real time, with my daughter 12 feet away. Maya was watching the snow through the window. She had heard. I could tell from the small set of her jaw. She didn't say anything. She bit her gingerbread cookie at the edge first. She always ate the edges first. Walter had taught her. I waited. We had a plan. Patricia called us to dinner at 6:30. The dining room had been laid out the way Walter used to lay it out, before he died. Before Patricia had repainted it. Green and gold table runner, 12 places, candles burning in the holders Walter had turned on his lathe in 1987. Patricia had seated Sophie on her right and Jackson on her left. Aunt Linda on Sophie's other side. Heather and David across from them. There were 2 empty chairs at the far end, near the wall, and 1 folding chair at the kids' card table in the corner, where my mother had set out a paper Santa plate and a juice box. Maya looked at the card table. Then she looked at me. Eli was already moving. He picked up the folding chair from the corner, walked it across the room, set it down between his place and mine. He picked up the paper plate and the juice box and walked them over too, set them at the new place. He nudged the chair in for Maya. He held her elbow gently. Maya sits with us, Pat, he said. His voice was warm, professional, the way he talks to permitting clerks. Always has. Patricia's lips pinched. Aunt Linda's eyebrows went up. Heather stared at her wine. Patricia opened her mouth. Then she closed it. Then she said, brightly, "Of course. More room for the pavlova. Heather, dear, the rolls?" Maya sat down between us. Eli unfolded her napkin onto her lap. The cedar box went under her chair. Her boots touched the leather strap. She didn't look up. She picked up her water glass with both hands. The candles burned steady. The fire in the wood stove crackled. Dinner began. Dinner went the way it always went. Aunt Linda told the same story about the 1987 ice storm. David asked David questions about the playoffs. Heather asked me 3 polite questions about Germany, none of them about Maya. Patricia complimented her own brisket twice. Maya ate. She didn't speak unless she was asked. She drank her water in small sips. She kept one foot on the cedar box under her chair, the way I'd taught her, so she could feel it the whole time. After the dishes were cleared but before the dessert came out, Patricia announced, "Time for presents." She had wrapped them herself, in matching gold paper with red ribbon. There were 2 big ones under the tree and 1 small flat one on the side table. She brought the big ones first. She handed Sophie a flat rectangle, 2 pounds, the unmistakable weight of a tablet. "For my smart girl. Open it." Sophie tore through the paper. iPad Pro. The new one. $1,200 retail. Sophie made the sound 10-year-olds make. She held it over her head. David clapped twice. Patricia handed Jackson a square box. "And for my little engineer." Jackson opened it. Nintendo Switch OLED. He yelled. Sophie yelled. Heather laughed. Patricia walked back to the side table. She picked up the small flat envelope. She walked over to where Maya was sitting between Eli and me. She handed Maya the envelope with 2 hands, like a small ceremony. "Here you go, sweetheart. Merry Christmas." Maya opened it. A drugstore Christmas card. A printed snowman. No money inside. No note. Just the card. Sophie looked up from her iPad. "Mom, where's Maya's iPad?" Patricia quickly. "Sophie, hush. We have rules." The rules were never written down. The rules had never been explained to anyone except the 4 adults in the room who had nodded along to them since 2017. Patricia walked back to the tree. She came back with a small velvet ring box. She knelt beside Sophie's chair. She opened the box. She held it up so the table could see. A gold chain. A heart pendant. An engraved letter on the front. S. Antique. Beautiful. My grandmother Jones, the one Patricia had kept in a safe deposit box for 19 years. "This was Grandma Jones, sweetie," Patricia said, "for my real granddaughter." The word real landed on the tablecloth like a coin. Sophie blinked. She knew that word mattered. She didn't know quite how. She let Patricia clasp the chain around her neck. She touched the pendant. Aunt Linda nodded approvingly. Joan would have wanted that. Joan was a stickler about heirlooms. Maya looked at her hands in her lap. Eli's knuckles whitened on his napkin. I kept my face very still. I'd been practicing it in mirrors since I was 7 years old. I felt the dog tag against my collarbone under my service blues. I focused on the feeling of the dented edge against my skin. I breathed once, slowly, the way I'd been taught at OCS to breathe before a hard call. David coughed. He looked at his wine. He didn't say anything. He never did. Patricia stood up, satisfied, and walked back to the tree. "One more," she said. Maya, very quietly, said, "Mom, may I be excused for the bathroom?" I said, "Yes, baby, come right back." She slid down. She left the cedar box under the chair. While Maya was in the bathroom, Patricia produced the last present. A small white envelope. She handed it to Jackson. "For your savings, my smart little man," she said. "From Grandma and from Aunt Linda." Jackson opened it. 5 $100 bills, crisp. From the bank that morning. Jackson said, "Whoa." He looked at the money. He looked at his mother. Heather smiled big. "Say thank you, Jack." "Thank you, Grandma." "Thank you, Aunt Linda." Aunt Linda laughed. "Don't spend it all on candy." "He'll spend it on Pokemon," David said. It was the most David had said all night. The fire in the wood stove popped. A log shifted. The room smelled like cedar smoke and burned brown sugar from the kitchen. Heather poured herself another glass of wine. Patricia poured herself one too. They clinked once. "Blood comes first," Aunt Linda said. "To no one in particular. To everyone in particular. That's just how it is." Maya came back from the bathroom then. She walked quietly. She climbed back into her chair between Eli and me. She put her hand on her lap. She looked at the cookies on her plate. Patricia did not hand her another envelope. Eli reached under the table and squeezed my knee once. "Steady. Long. Don't move yet. Don't react. Not yet." I did not react. I picked up my water glass. I drank from it. I set it down. I cut a piece of brisket I was not going to eat. I moved it around my plate. Maya looked at me. She looked at Eli. She looked at the cedar box under her chair. Then she looked at the dessert that wasn't on the table yet. "Mom," she said softly, "is it almost time?" I said, "Soon." Sophie was still touching her gold pendant. She kept turning the S over with her thumb. She was a thoughtful kid. I had always liked Sophie. Sophie didn't know any of the rules either, which was part of why I had always liked Sophie. "Mom," she said, "Maya didn't get one. Why didn't Maya get one?" Heather, fast. "Sophie, eat your pie." "But she's our cousin." "She's adopted, Sophie. Eat your pie." The word adopted came out of Heather's mouth like a swear word, like a small grease stain on a clean tablecloth. Like she was passing along a fact about a stranger. I watched Maya. Maya did not look up. Maya looked at the candle in front of her. The flame leaned a little to the left, then to the right, then steadied. David coughed again. He drank from his beer. He did not look at his wife. Patricia closed her eyes for a moment. Just a moment. I caught it. She opened them again and lifted her wine glass to her lips. Sophie did not eat her pie. She put her fork down. "That's not what cousins are," Sophie said. Heather said, "Sophie, we are not having this conversation right now." "What conversation?" "Sophie." Sophie turned to look at Maya. "I'm sorry, Maya." Maya looked up. She smiled the small, careful smile. "It's okay, Sophie." "It's not okay," Sophie said. She set it to her plate. The room got very still. I felt Eli's hand on my knee tighten once. Hold. We were almost there. The dessert was about to come out. 3 more minutes. I picked up my water glass again. I sipped. I looked at my daughter. She was ready. While Heather was scolding Sophie and Patricia was pretending not to hear, my mind went where it always went at moments like these. To the dock at the lake cabin. Summer of 2023. The last summer my father was alive, although none of us knew it then. Walter knew it. Walter knew it before any of us. It had been a Tuesday in late July. Eli and Maya were in the cabin making blueberry pancakes. I was on the dock with my dad. He was in his blue work shirt with the sleeves rolled past his elbows. His forearms were sunburned the way only carpenters' forearms get sunburned. He handed me a manila folder. The folder had a small label in his handwriting. Holland's Family Trust, irrevocable. "What's this, Dad?" "That's a private trust. I had George Whelan draft it. He's an estate attorney out of Duluth. Your mother doesn't know him. He's mine." "Dad?" "Why?" He looked at the lake. He let his fishing line out a little. He squinted at the dock pylons. "Ivy, I'm not going to make many more summers. My heart is failing. The doctor said congestive. I haven't told your mother. I'm not going to. She'd make it about her." "Dad. Don't. Listen. I see what your mother does to Maya. I have eyes. I have 8 years of eyes. The day you brought Maya home, your mother said in this kitchen, and I heard her, that Maya wasn't her real grandchild. I never forgot it. I have never forgotten anything she has said about that little girl." I held the folder in my lap. I did not open it. "The lake cabin is in the trust now. The trust beneficiary is Maya Rose Andrews. There's a separate account at Park State Bank. About $80,000 in savings bonds, plus the proceeds from selling my shop tools. It vests when Maya turns 8. Dad. Ivy, listen. She is my granddaughter. In every sense that matters. I will not have her left empty-handed by your mother. That is not happening. Not on my watch, and not after my watch. He handed me the second envelope. Cream paper, his handwriting, sealed with a wax stamp he had made himself, in his shop, from a melted candle and a brass button. To be opened by Patricia in front of family, when Maya is ready, it read. I built the box yesterday. Cedar. It's in the workshop. Maya helped me sand the lid. She doesn't know what's in it. She knows it's hers. I came back to the dinner table. The candles, the empty Hallmark card, my daughter's hand on her water glass. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I want to pause here for a second. I'm sitting at a dining table where my mother just handed my daughter an empty Christmas card while my niece holds a $1,000 iPad. And I'm about to walk you through what happened over the next 43 minutes, because that's how long it took for my 8-year-old to slide a cedar box across that table. If you've sat at a table like this one, drop the word witnessed in the comments. I'm reading, everyone. I excused myself from the table. I knelt next to Maya's chair. I put my hand over hers on her lap. I see you, Maya. You know what to do? She nodded. She kept her voice low. When the dessert is on the table, Mom? When the dessert is on the table. You're going to read Grandpa's letter if Grandma won't? I'm going to read Grandpa's letter if Grandma won't. Okay. I touched her braid. I stood up. I walked back to my seat. Patricia watched me with the flat, polite face she puts on when she doesn't approve of something, but doesn't want to make a scene yet. Everything okay, Ivy? Everything's fine, Mom. You spoiled her, you know, out there in all that traveling, that military life. She doesn't even sit still. I didn't answer. I picked up my water glass. Maya reached down under her chair. She rested her small hand on the leather strap of the cedar box. She left her hand there. She did not pick the box up. She just held the strap, the way you hold a dog's leash before you stand up to walk it. The leather strap was scuffed near the buckle where Walter had hooked the box on his belt to carry it from the shop to the porch. Maya knew that scuff. She had sat on his lap in the workshop the day he sanded the lid. She had asked him what was inside. He had said, "Something you can hand your grandma someday, sweetheart." She had asked, "What if I don't want to?" He had said, "Then you don't have to. But it's yours when you do." Heather brought the apple pie out of the kitchen on a glass cake stand. She set it in the middle of the table with 2 pie servers and a small jug of cream. Aunt Linda sliced the first piece for Patricia. Patricia waved her off and stood up. She tapped her wine glass with a butter knife. The room quieted. "I just want to say something," Patricia said, "before we get into the pie." She looked around the table. She smiled at Sophie. She smiled at Jackson. She smiled vaguely past Maya. "Family is everything," she said. Walter, rest his soul, used to say it all the time. "Family is blood." That's what he said. "Sophie, Jackson, you're my heart. You always will be. And we don't do half measures in this family. We give what we can. We give to the kids we have." David shifted in his chair. He looked at his plate. Heather's eyes were a little too bright from the wine. I put my hand on Maya's hand. She let me. Eli silently reached for his phone, opened the voice memo app, and pressed record. He set the phone on the table between him and me, face down, the microphone toward Patricia. He had told me he was going to do this. I had told him to do it. "Walter always said family was blood," Patricia repeated. "I think about that a lot. I think about it every Christmas." She raised her glass. "To the kids," she said. Heather raised her glass. Aunt Linda raised her glass. David raised his. I did not raise mine. Eli did not raise his. Maya did not raise her water glass. She looked down at her hands. Patricia drank. Patricia sat down. She seemed pleased with herself. She passed the pie around. Heather served Sophie. Aunt Linda served Jackson. Heather served David. David served Heather. Patricia served herself. No one served Maya. Eli quietly stood up, picked up a clean plate from the buffet behind us, cut a slice for Maya himself, and set it in front of her. He put a small dollop of cream on top because she liked cream. He did all of this without saying a single word. Patricia watched him. She did not say anything either. "And speaking of family," Patricia said, picking up her wineglass. "Heather, dear, I've been thinking about the lake cabin for next summer. The Airbnb has been such a nice little business. I think we should fix up the dock this year, maybe screen in the porch. The reviews keep mentioning the mosquitoes." Heather brightened. "Oh, Mom, that's a great idea. We could do it Memorial Day weekend." "Maybe," Patricia said. "We did about 4,000 last August. Imagine what a screened porch would do." Eli's hand under the table found my knee again. He squeezed. He didn't look at me. Patricia was, with apparent unconcern, telling everyone at the table that she had been turning my father's lake cabin into a rental property. She did not know, could not know, that the cabin had not been hers to rent for 2.5 years. She was monetizing something she did not own. She was monetizing it in front of the 8-year-old who owned it. Eli looked at me. I looked at Maya. Maya looked at the cedar box. The pie was on the table. It was time. I gave Maya the smallest nod. She set her fork down. She wiped her mouth on her napkin, the way Eli had taught her. She folded the napkin once, set it next to her plate. She slid down off the folding chair. She reached under and lifted the cedar box up with both hands. It was heavier than she was used to. She held it against her chest. The leather strap dangled. She walked. She walked the long way around the dining table, past Heather, past David, past Aunt Linda. The wood floor creaked under her Mary Janes. Heather looked up. Heather's fork stopped in midair. "Maya?" Heather said. "What? Sweetie, what are you doing?" Maya didn't answer. She walked past Heather. She walked past Aunt Linda. She stopped at the head of the table where Patricia was sitting with her wine and her pie and her satisfied smile. She set the cedar box on the table in front of Patricia. She slid it the last 6 inches forward, with both hands, until the front edge of the box touched the edge of Patricia's plate. She kept her hands on the box for a moment. Then she let go. She put her hands at her sides, the way Walter had taught her to stand at attention. She tilted her chin up just a little. The room was very quiet. The fire popped once in the wood stove. The candles flickered, Maya said, in a voice that was small but clear. "Grandma, Mom told me to give this to you if you ever ignored me again." Patricia stared at the box. Then she stared at Maya. Then she stared at me. Aunt Linda gave a small, startled laugh. "Oh, is this some sort of game?" It was not a game. Patricia's voice was very small. "What is this?" Maya did not answer her. She had said her line. She had been told not to say anything else. She had practiced this with us for 3 weeks. She stood at attention next to the head of the table, her chin tilted up, her hands at her sides. Aunt Linda laughed again, but the laugh died at the edges. Pat, what is the child doing? Was this rehearsed?" Heather said, "Mom, what is that?" David said, "Pat, what's this?" Sophie put her iPad face down on her napkin and leaned forward. Jackson did not look up. Patricia did not move her hands. She looked at the cedar box. She looked at the brass tag tied to the latch. The tag read, "For Maya, when the time comes." She recognized the brass tag. She recognized Walter's handwriting on it. I watched her recognize it. I watched the color go out of her cheeks. "Ivy," she said, very low. "What is this?" "It's for you, Mom," I said. "From Maya. Open it." "Ivy." "Open it, Patricia." I did not call her Mom that time. I did not call her Mom from that moment on, in that room, for the rest of the night. She put her hand on the latch. Her hand was shaking very slightly. The brass latch made a small, dry sound. "Pat," Aunt Linda said. "Pat, you don't have to open this. Whatever this is." "Linda," I said. "Be quiet." Linda looked at me. I had never used that tone with her. I held her gaze the way you hold the gaze of a witness during cross. She closed her mouth. Patricia opened the latch. The lid creaked. The cedar smell came up out of the box. Walter had varnished it 3 times with the linseed oil he kept in his workshop, and the smell was unmistakable, and Patricia recognized it. I saw the recognition pass across her face. Inside the box, in neat order, were 3 things. On top, a manila folder, labeled in Walter's handwriting, Holland's Family Trust, Irrevocable, executed June 14, 2023. Under that, a second manila folder, labeled Beneficiary, Maya Rose Andrews. Under that, a sealed cream envelope with a small wax seal Walter had made himself from a brass button, and on top of everything, propped against the inside of the lid, a 4x6 photograph. Walter, sunburned, in the blue work shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He was sitting on the dock at the lake cabin. Maya was 2 years old. She was sitting on his lap. They were both grinning. Maya had her hand on his beard. Patricia saw the photograph first. She made a small sound. Not a word. A small breath in. She reached for the photograph and stopped. She did not pick it up. Her hand hovered over it. "Walter," she said, like a question. "Yes," I said. She looked at me. For a moment her face was not angry. For a moment her face was something else. Bewildered, maybe. Recognizing, maybe. Then her face hardened again. She picked up the first manila folder. She opened it. The trust document was 18 pages. She read the first page. She read the second page. She got to the page that listed the lake cabin under the heading Trust Property. She inhaled sharply. She did not exhale. "This isn't real," Patricia said. "It's real, Mom. This isn't legal. It's legal. This is... Ivy... This is some sort of joke. Some sort of... Walter would never... He did, Mom. Look at the signature." She looked at the signature on page 18. She looked at George Whelan's notarization stamp. She looked at the date. She looked at the witnesses' signatures, the Whelan paralegal and Walter's old shop foreman, both notarized. She put her hand to her mouth. "He didn't tell me." "No, he didn't." She turned the page. She saw the deed transfer. Lake Cabin, 360 acres, Pine County. Transferred into the Holland's Family Trust on June 14, 2023. Beneficiary, Maya Rose Andrews. Trustee until age 25, Ivy Andrews. She turned the page again. The trust accountancy. A list of assets. Total trust value as of the most recent audit. $508,400. You knew this? The whole time? Yes. You knew this when I was renting the cabin? Yes, Mom. You knew this when I knew it on the dock, the summer he gave me the folder. 2.5 years ago. She set the trust folder down. She picked up the second one. She did not open it yet. She picked up the cream envelope. She looked at the wax seal. "To be opened by Patricia, in front of family, when Maya is ready." She read aloud, in a very flat voice. Aunt Linda whispered, "Pat, don't." Patricia looked at her sister. Then she looked at the envelope. Then she looked at me. Her hands were shaking now. She broke the wax seal. She unfolded the letter. Walter's handwriting filled the entire page front and back. Patricia read silently. Her lips moved a little. Her eyes moved down the page. Her face went white. Not pale. White. She closed the letter. She put it back in the envelope. She set the envelope on the table. "I can't read this aloud," she said. "Read it, Mom. Ivy. Read it. Aloud. To the family. Ivy. Please. Read it, Mom. He wrote it for you to read aloud." Patricia was crying now. Not the showy crying she did at funerals. Quiet, narrow, ashamed crying. She put her hand over her eyes. I stood up. I walked around the table. I stopped at her shoulder. I took the envelope gently from her hand. I did not look at her face. I unfolded my father's letter. I looked at his handwriting. The looped Y. The slant. The narrow T. I had not read this letter before. He had told me what was in it. He had not let me read it. I read it in my JAG officer voice. Even. Measured. The voice I used for court memos. "Patricia, I am writing this in July of 2023, the summer I learned my heart is failing. I have known for 40 years that you measure people by the wrong yardstick. You measure them by blood, by name, by whether they listened to your mother in 1968. You do not measure them by what they do, who they love, how they show up. I have forgiven you many things across 40 years of marriage. I have forgiven you for the way you treated our daughter Ivy when she enlisted. I have forgiven you for the way you treated your sister Linda's first husband. I have forgiven you for the way you treated my mother. I paused. The room was completely silent. I kept reading. I cannot forgive you for our granddaughter Maya. I kept my voice steady. I had read worse things aloud in worse rooms. From the day Ivy and Eli carried her into our house, you decided she was not yours. I watched you decide it. I watched you decide it in our kitchen, with your back to me, when you thought I couldn't hear. You said, "She's not really family." I never forgot it. I have never forgotten anything you have said about that little girl. Aunt Linda put a hand over her mouth. You skipped her at her first birthday. You skipped her at her christening. You sent Sophie a savings bond and Maya a coloring book. You told my sister-in-law Doreen, at a barbecue in 2019, that you were tolerating her. I heard you. I was on the other side of the fence with the dogs. David lowered his beer. I am writing this, I read, because I do not think you are going to change. I have spent 2 years hoping. I have spent 2 years showing you photographs of her on my phone, hoping. I do not believe my hope will outlive me. So I have done what I should have done in 2017. I have put the lake cabin into a trust for Maya. I have put my retirement bonds into the trust for Maya. I have put the proceeds from my shop tools into the trust for Maya. The trust is irrevocable. It cannot be undone. You cannot challenge it in court. George Whelan made sure of that. I turned the page. She is my granddaughter. In every sense that matters. I let the line sit on the air. If you are reading this, Patricia, then you have failed Maya again. You have ignored her on a day that matters. So now she has a home that you cannot take away from her. And it is not the home you were planning to monetize. Sign the audit paperwork. Pay the trust back. Look at the child you have refused to see. Walter. I folded the letter. I set it gently on the table next to the cedar box. Stop with me here for a moment. What you just heard, that's my father's voice. 2.5 years after he was buried. I'm an Army JAG officer. I've stood in front of courts-martial. I've never had a harder moment than reading that letter aloud at my mother's Christmas table. If you've ever wished someone you loved was still here to say the right thing, drop a heart in the comments. Subscribe. The next 8 minutes is what 5 years built toward. Patricia did not say anything for a long time. Her hand was still over her eyes. Aunt Linda was the first to speak. Pat, honey, he didn't mean... He meant it, Linda, I said. Every word. He told me on the dock. He told me what he was going to write before he wrote it. Patricia took her hand down from her face. She picked up the trust folder. She turned to the deed page. She looked at the cabin transfer. She turned to the audit clause. She read it. The audit clause required the trustee to recover all income generated from trust property since the property entered the trust. Since June 14th, 2023. The cabin had been rented as a vacation property starting that fall. Patricia had collected the rent. Patricia had collected, as I had calculated 3 months ago with my Army financial counselor, approximately $96,000 in rental income across about 80 weeks. With the 7% interest, the audit number was about $103,000. She read the audit clause twice. She closed the folder. She stood up so fast the chair scraped backward and hit the wall. Her wine glass was in her hand. She did not seem to remember that it was. Her grip tightened. The glass cracked. The sound was small, but everyone heard it. A drop of wine ran down her wrist. He gave her the cabin? Then she made the sound. It was not a word. It was not crying. It was a small wordless scream. Sharp. Single. The sound an animal makes when it steps wrong. He gave her the cabin? She said again, louder. Almost a shout. He gave the cabin to... She did not finish the sentence. Aunt Linda was on her feet, hands flapping. Pat, it's all right. We'll figure this out. There has to be some way to. Pat, it's okay. She's not really family, Pat. You said it best. You said it best. We'll get the lawyer. The line landed in the room like a coin dropping into a quiet glass of water for the second time that night. But this time, the room was different. This time, the room was paying attention. Sophie covered her mouth with both hands. David turned to look at his wife. His face was the face of a man who had just realized he had been at the wrong dinner for 10 years. Heather did not look at anyone. Patricia turned, slowly, to her sister. Linda. Pat, I'm just saying. Linda, shut up. Aunt Linda's mouth stayed open. Patricia had never spoken to her that way in living memory. She closed her mouth. She sat down. She did not pick up her wineglass. I did not smile. I did not have to. I looked at Maya. Maya was still standing at attention beside Patricia's chair, her hands at her sides, her chin tilted up. She had not moved during the entire reading of the letter. She had not flinched at the scream. She had not flinched at Aunt Linda's line. I looked at my daughter and I felt something my father probably wanted me to feel. Maya, sweetheart, I said gently, come sit by me. Maya walked the long way back around the table. The wood floor creaked under her Mary Janes. Aunt Linda would not look at her. Patricia would not look at her. Heather watched her walk every step of the way. Heather watched Maya the whole way around the table. 8 years of Christmas dinners. 8 years of cutting her own daughter's pie and not Maya's. 8 years of nodding at her mother. Heather's face did something I had not seen on Heather's face in a very long time. It crumpled, just at the corners, just for a second. Her mouth worked silently. She looked at her daughter, Sophie. Sophie was watching her. Sophie's hand was still over her mouth. She looked at Maya. She really looked at her. Maya looked back. Maya gave the same small, careful, polite smile she had given when Patricia had handed her the empty card. Heather did not apologize. Heather did not say a word. Heather just looked. And then Heather looked down at her pie. The moment closed. Maya sat down between Eli and me. Eli put his hand on her shoulder. Maya put her hand over his. I waited. I waited until Patricia was looking at me again. I waited until Linda had stopped tearing at her napkin. I waited until David was looking at the table and not at his wife. I waited until Sophie's hand had come down from her mouth. The fire crackled in the wood stove. The candles burned. Outside, the snow had picked up. I could see the white flakes drifting past the dining room window like static on a television. I stood up. Not abruptly. Not theatrically. The way I stood up in court before reading a charge. Slowly. Centered. Both feet planted. The room did not need me to raise my voice. The room was already listening. Mom, I said. Patricia looked at me. Let me walk you through it. I kept my voice in the cadence I had been taught to use at OCS. Even. Measured. 1 sentence per breath. No emphasis. No theatrics. The voice that means I know exactly what I'm saying, and there is no part of this I am improvising. The Hollins Family Trust is irrevocable. It was executed by Dad on June 14, 2023, with attorney George Whelan of Whelan & Sons in Duluth, Minnesota. The trust was properly witnessed and notarized by Mr. Whelan's paralegal and by Russell Pratt, who was Dad's shop foreman for 14 years. Patricia opened her mouth. I'm not done, Mom. Listen. She closed her mouth. The sole beneficiary of the trust is Maya Rose Andrews. The trustee is me until Maya turns 25. The trust property includes the lake cabin at Pine County parcel number 4117-008-006, approximately 360 acres on Big Pine Lake, $80,000 in U.S. Treasury savings bonds, originally Dad's, and the proceeds from the sale of his shop tools and equipment, deposited in a trust account at Park State Bank. I looked at the table. The lake cabin transferred to trust ownership on Dad's death date, October 22, 2023. From that date forward, You did not own the cabin. You did not have the legal authority to rent it. You did not have the legal authority to keep the rental income. Patricia made a small sound. I kept going. The audit clause in Section 7 of the trust requires the trustee, that's me, to recover all income generated from trust property, plus 7% interest per annum. By my calculation, you've collected approximately $96,000 in rental income across 80 weeks. The audit number, with interest, is approximately $103,000. The audit will be conducted by Whelan & Sons starting January 7th. You will receive certified notice by mail next week. I let that sit. The room was completely still. Aunt Linda was holding her napkin against her face. I am not asking for the money back, Mom. The trust is asking. I am the messenger. Patricia stood up again. She was past white now. She was flushed. Her hands were shaking. She pointed at me. Then she pointed at Maya. Then she pointed at me again. You knew. You knew the whole time. You let me rent it out. You watched. For years. You watched me. Your own mother. I watched, Mom. You let me steal. You let me steal from a child. No, Mom. I let you choose. Every month I let you choose. Every Christmas I let you choose. What is that supposed to mean? You had 2.5 years to be Dad's wife. To be the person he thought he had married. You kept choosing not to. You kept choosing the cabin rentals instead of his granddaughter. He would never. He did, Mom. He told me on the dock. He gave me the key to George Whelan's office. He gave me the brass tag for the box. He let me choose when to use it. Patricia put her hands flat on the table. She leaned into them. Her chest moved up and down. You let your own mother. I let my mother be my mother. Until she stopped being one to my daughter. Then I let her be exactly what she chose to be. This is... Ivy. This is cruel. This is January 7th, Mom. This is paperwork. This is what Dad asked me to do. She made the second sound. It was bigger than the first. It was a real scream, low in her throat, the kind that comes out of grief instead of anger. She covered her face with both hands. Maya watched her. Maya did not look afraid. Maya looked at Patricia the way Walter had once looked at a wounded deer he had to put down behind his shop in the fall of 2009 when Maya was a baby and I had been on leave. It was not satisfaction on my daughter's face. It was not even forgiveness. It was, I think, the beginning of understanding. I walked around the table to Maya. I knelt by her chair. I smoothed her braid. The dog tag under my collar moved against my collarbone. I see you, Maya. She looked up at me. Her eyes were dry. She had been ready for this. We had practiced it. Grandpa saw me too. Yes, sweetie, he did. I stood up. Eli was already on his feet. He pulled Maya's coat off the back of the chair. He helped her into it. He buttoned the top button under her chin. He picked up the cedar box. He held it under his arm. He picked up Walter's letter from the table. He folded it once and slid it into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. I turned to the table. Patricia. She did not look at me. Patricia. The cabin will be cleared and the keys returned to the Andrews family by July 1st. The audit is January 7th. You will be notified by mail. She did not look at me. Linda, do not call. Not for any reason. Not for Easter, not for my birthday, not for anyone's birthday. Do not write. Do not show up. Aunt Linda nodded into her napkin. Heather. Heather looked up. Her eyes were wet. When Sophie is older, not next year, when she chooses to write to Maya, she can write. Until then, you don't write either. You don't text. You don't drop by. Sophie can choose for herself, in her own time. That's between Sophie and Maya. Heather nodded once. Sophie was crying quietly now, into her napkin. Jackson was finally looking up from his iPad. David. David nodded once. He had never been the problem. He had also never been the solution. He knew the difference, and he didn't argue it. I picked up my own coat. I picked up Maya's small hand. The three of us walked toward the foyer. The brass bell on the door rang as Eli opened it. The cold air came in. We walked out into the snow. The SUV started slow in the cold. Eli let it idle a minute. He turned the heater on. Maya sat in her booster seat in the back, the cedar box on her lap, her hand flat across the lid. She did not say anything for a while. Eli pulled out of Patricia's driveway. The Christmas lights on the porch railing reflected off the snow. The house got smaller in the rearview mirror. The brass bell on the door rang once when the wind caught it, very faintly. None of us looked back. We drove out of Stillwater toward Highway 36. The snow was thick enough that the streetlights had halos around them. The wipers ticked. After about 10 minutes, Maya said, "Mom, will Grandma write back?" "Probably not, sweetie." "Okay." She was quiet for a while longer. The heat finally hit her in the back seat. She unzipped her coat. She kept her hand on the cedar box. Then she said, "I like the cabin." Eli, gentle. "Good. We're going next summer." Another quiet stretch. The wipers ticked. The heater hummed. Then Maya said, "Mom, can I bring my friend Tessa to the cabin?" I laughed. It was the first time I had laughed in 3 weeks. I laughed harder than I expected. I had to wipe my eyes. "Yes, baby," I said. "You can bring whoever you want. It's your cabin." She thought about that. The snow blew against the windshield. The dashboard glowed green. "It's our cabin," she said. "Yes, sweetie. It's ours." She put her cheek against the cedar box. She closed her eyes. By the time we hit the highway, she was asleep with her hand still flat against the lid. Eli reached over and took my hand. We did not say anything for the rest of the drive home. March came hard that year, with 2 snowstorms a week apart. The audit was settled by the middle of the month. Patricia paid the trust $103,200. The wire transfer came through on a Tuesday at 11 in the morning. George Whelan called me from his office in Duluth to confirm. He sounded tired. I thanked him. Patricia did not attend Maya's spring concert. I did not invite her. Maya sang the alto part on "I See the Moon," and Eli took her to the diner afterward for pancakes. I had to fly back to Fort McCoy for 2 days, but I watched the video 3 times on the plane. Heather sent me one short email in February. The subject line was blank. The message was 1 sentence. "I'm sorry I didn't see her sooner." I did not reply. I read it twice and I closed the tab. Aunt Linda did not call. She did not write. She quietly removed herself from the family group text and started a new one with just her and Patricia. I heard about it from David, who texted me in April to say he and Heather were going to therapy. He thanked me for what I had done at Christmas. I told him to thank Maya. Sophie sent Maya a handmade Easter card in April. Pink construction paper. A drawing of 2 girls holding hands. A note inside. "I miss you. Mom says I can write you when I want. Love, Sophie." Maya wrote back. She let me read it before she sealed it. The letter was short and it was kind. She signed it with a small heart. The cedar box lives on our mantelpiece now. The varnish has darkened a little with age. Walter's silver dog tag rests on top of it, the dented edge facing up, the chain coiled the way Maya likes it. Maya is 9 now. The cabin opens in May. She has invited Tessa, Sophie, and her best friend Andre from down the block. Eli is sanding the dock on weekends. I made captain selection for promotion to lieutenant colonel last month. My next station is the Pentagon. We will keep the house in Stillwater. Maya wants to keep the house in Stillwater. I learned one thing from my father after he was gone, that I am not sure I would have learned any other way. Family isn't a line you draw with blood. It's a chair you set at the table, every single time, even when other people pretend the chair isn't there. That's my story. A cedar box, a dad who saw clearly, and an 8-year-old who knew what to do. If this story reminded you to set the chair, set it tonight. If you know someone who needed to hear this, share it. Drop a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.
That is the kind of drama we tell here on Calm Deep Stories. Stories where family betray each other over money, love, property, inheritance, pride, and control. Stories where the person everyone dismissed finally reveals the truth. Stories where the ending feels satisfying because the right people finally see what they refused to see before. If this story made you angry, emotional, shocked, or satisfied, then you are exactly where you belong. Subscribe to Calm Deep Stories for more emotional drama stories filled with betrayal, secrets, revenge, karma, family conflict, and unforgettable twists.